On this episode of the Built for the Pursuit podcast, we have Travis T-Bone Turner from Bone Collector talking about giving us an update on how he's doing, what's coming up for this season, and also some archery tips that might help you out in the field. Hey everybody, welcome to the Built for the Pursuit podcast, episode 2. We've got an awesome guest today with Travis T-Bone Turner, the archery guru. So thanks for joining us and making time. How you been?
Doing good, man. Just certainly ready for the fall time cool down. It's been hotter than Hades down here in Georgia, that's for sure.
I bet. What'd you guys get to during that heat dome that everybody was in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the actual temp, I don't think we ever hit 100, but we danced around 98, 99 with about 180% humidity. So,
Jeez.
Yeah, it was feel like temperature. A couple of times it was like 114, 112. So, yeah, it was.
Yeah, I don't know if that means we
you
win.
can't even take a shower. You get out of the you get out of the shower and you walk outside, you're drenched again.
Still in the shower. Yeah. I think we hit temp like 105 here.
We got up to 100, yeah. And it was pretty I don't know what the
humid. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
at that
it was
point.
the same thing. I stepped outside and I was soaked.
Yeah, that's crazy. What have you been getting ready for this season then? You know, what have you been when it's not a billion degrees outside?
Yeah, been shooting bows a lot. I love doing anything, land management and stuff like that. So we've been working on the properties that we have, getting everything prepped for planting food plots. We usually don't do that down here until the end of September to avoid that a lot of times this time of year there's a lot of drought, and then also we want to avoid the army worm. So getting everything prepped for that. We're actually, been shooting bows a lot this year. I mean, I probably shot more and practiced more throughout the year than I have in the last 10 or 15 years. So really enjoying that.
Yeah.
A lot of us local guys, we all get together. There's about 20 of us. We shoot once a week. We have a really good time with that. That's about it. Lining up a few hunts. Gonna do a little bit of traveling this year. Of course, since I lost my leg to cancer a couple years ago, things have changed a little bit. But hey, the arms still work, and the eyes still work. It just I can't run up and down the mountains like I used to. Remember?
No, it's been really honestly inspirational just seeing you continue to get it done, and it really seeing you've been helping us out as much as possible, and you gave us some videos that we're gonna put up on our sort of deer HQ area we're building on the site, and it's been really just seeing you not slow down. It's been really impressive. So just want to let you know you're an inspiration to a lot of the people here in the building, and whatever you need from us, let us know. But
oh man, I appreciate that. I guess and I appreciate the whole industry support, and not just that, just the consumers and the people that we've shaken hands with or hugged their necks throughout the years, and everybody that's reached out through social media and stuff like that. We don't ever like to use the word fans, but they feel like close friends or family, and man, just the outpouring of support and thoughts and prayers and stuff means everything. And of course the industry, Bushnell, I've been with Bushnell for 20 plus years, and it's certainly family. So it's real easy to get your lip poked out because things aren't going so good, but at the end of the day, no matter how bad I've got it, it could always be worse, or someone's got it a lot worse than I do. So I got a lot to be thankful for, and I'm blessed. So
yeah. No, that's awesome. That the outlook and just continuing to go. But with that, what prep components, I guess, have you had to change? Like, are those figured out yet for you, or are you still kind of trying some stuff out?
Yeah, still figuring things out. There's I know things are never going to be back to the way they was, but I'm trying to get worked out. Actually, as we speak, I've got to lose some weight, of course, so that I'm more proficient on my prosthetic, because it's easy to think like, well, hey, you just need to get a prosthetic, but you got to think about saving what you have. Meaning, like, if I hurt my other leg or I blow a shoulder out or an elbow, then my mobility goes down even worse, because I can't get around on a walker, I can't do things like that. So when you're learning or rehabbing with your, prosthetic, you got to make sure that you try to limit the failures or try to have no failures, and safety is really a key. So with that said, I've got to lose some weight. And another thing a lot of people don't understand is the leg that I do have left, the left leg, I cut those 3 toes off when I was a teenager. So I don't have the best balance and agility on the leg that I do have left. So it's basically like a 4x4 post, so to speak. So I don't have the best balance with it. So I gotta be a little more cautious. But the number one goal right now is focusing on losing some weight. We've slowly but surely been doing that, and actually right now we're been clearing out trees this week. We're putting a swim pool in, a plunge type exercise pool, so that I can get exercise. We were going to do that just before I got cancer anyway, but now we're going to have a pool in there, so for exercise and therapy and stuff like that. So that's what we're in the middle of doing right now.
On your recent post, you guys were cutting down those huge trees, but you're saying it's for a pool. I didn't know if that was land prep stuff for hunting, or come to find out it's for a pool, though, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, we were gonna get a pool just before I got diagnosed with cancer, and we had to put that on hold, of course. And then we've got a couple of these huge pine trees that are kind of leaning towards the house, so it's kind of while we were cutting down a few trees for the pool, we took out a few that were a problem, that could potentially be a problem on the house. So that's what we're doing.
Gotcha. Those are giant. Yeah, we've taken some down, but I was like, man, I'm not signing up to do that.
Yeah, that's out of our pay grade. We had to hire somebody to do it.
Yeah, it's not worth the experiment of, oh, I was wrong.
There's a fine line, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I have to add an addition to the house. Well, no, I think that'll be good. Just I've heard a lot of really awesome things about the like the water therapy and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, plus down here in the South, if you're outside and you're sweating so bad, at least in a pool you don't notice it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. When are you hoping to complete that?
We're in the. Hopefully, it'll probably be. I'm not sure but I think that it would be. It's a small pool. It's a plunge pool.
Yeah.
So it's really just an exercise pool. So and the reason for having small is one, it's just going to be me, my wife, and my son for the most part. And on top of that, the smaller it is, the less water it is, so that we can keep it heated.
Yeah.
And that we can get more use out of it throughout the year when you've got a heated pool, and then you're not having to heat 30-something thousand gallons. You don't have to heat that much. So hopefully it'll be done by the end of October, I would think.
Yeah.
Nice.
You were kind of talking about some of the changes. So it sounds like probably the biggest thing you're kind of planning for is how you're getting in and out of stands and accessing areas. Is that pretty much the biggest component you have to replan?
Yeah, thank goodness. Most all the hunting that we do is filmed, so have somebody there to help, so to speak. But be a lot of ground blinds, and then certainly when I get my prosthetic, I would like to think that in the future, when I get proficient on the prosthetic, that I should be able to, climb into a box stand or something like that. But we just got to take it slow and easy. And the biggest thing, I'll be able to hunt some form or fashion. I'm not really concerned about that. I did that last year, and I will this year. It may not be like I did before. The thing that I'm kind of excited about is getting the prosthetic, and my love is land management and stuff. So I have skid steers and tractors, and me not being able to take advantage of that diesel therapy, I'm missing out. So that's my number one goal, is to be able to get in and out of those really good and on my own. So I love cutting grass too. I know that sounds silly, but I love cutting grass. So I'm looking forward to doing all those things again as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's the part. You post a lot about your land management adventures, and they're always awesome to see, and just what's going on the property. So
it starts to be just as much fun or more than the hunt sometimes. Like it lasts a little longer than the hunt season sometimes. It's a full-time, year-round gig. So
it really does, and I mean, it just adds to the pride factor. I mean, I've always loved doing that, and I still continue to do. And then the harvest and the deer is just the cherry on top. So I just love everything about it. So taking a piece of property that's really, really rough and having the vision and the insight to go in there and carve it up and polish it up, and you get to see the fruits of your labor and reap the rewards of your labor. So I just love everything about it, and I think I could revert back to being a farmer real easy. And I think most hunters are that way too. The prep work and the stuff that you put into it makes it that much more rewarding what you get out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. So with, you said you were training a lot and shooting the bow a lot more. You sent us some tips on how to get sighted in and that sort of thing. But when someone's kind of looking at that, when they're practicing, what should they be looking for? Like, what do you tell someone like the best way to practice for the season is, or getting ready?
Yeah, I think a lot of people they think that they need to cram, or what it seems to be, throughout my years of working in a retail and talking to folks, a lot of people seem to wait till 2 weeks before season and they try to cram in a whole bunch of shooting, shooting 60 to 100 arrows in every session up to the season. And what I would encourage people to do is try to let themselves maybe not practice so much in one time, but I would rather see somebody like before work, leave the house or wake up, 10 minutes early, go outside and shoot, pour your heart and soul into like 3 to 5 arrows. And just shoot 3 to 5 arrows, cold bore, and, really bring up the intensity of like it was a hunting shot. And, just leave them in the target, go to work. When you come home, pull those arrows and shoot you 5 or 10 arrows as well, so that, you don't have to get a 20-shot warm-up before you're shooting pretty good, so that you're, not necessarily perfect practice. Practice don't make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect. So really pour your heart and soul in, especially once you get your bow sighted in and tuned and, everything's grouping pretty well. Rather than just flinging arrows and going through the motions for, 60 to 100 shots, at least pour your heart and soul into, just less than 10 shots a day will help you immensely,
like you
and build your confidence.
Yeah,
that first one's the money shot too, right? Like cold, you don't get a warm up, right, when you're out there. So as it gets closer, yeah, that's great.
How from a setup perspective, is it just whatever works? Maybe you're restricted on space. Maybe there's some others. What's the target in terms of distances? Are you trying to match?
You stretch it out a little bit,
Yeah.
like to say, okay, I'm shooting at 60, so a 30-yard shot's easy, or you? Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of guys do that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Throughout social media, you'll see lots of people shooting long distance, lots of long distance, and which is fine. But you owe it to the animal to be proficient wherever you feel proficient at. And then we got to remember we're not shooting at a foam target or a bale. The animal can move, or a whitetail feeding on acorns at 60 yards. That can be a tough shot for sure. So, by all means, I encourage people to shoot long distances, but, try their best to, that's the whole point and the whole beauty of archery is trying to get as close as you possibly can. I personally hope that I never have to shoot one, beyond 40 yards, even though I feel like accuracy wise, I'm proficient out to 100, but, I don't really want to do that just because of, you're shooting at a live critter. They can take a half a step and then you went from good to bad real quick, even if you did everything correctly.
Yeah.
So, I tell people, I know everybody doesn't live in the country and they don't have a range go to 100 yards, but to that person that say lives in an apartment or they work till, dark and they can't, even if you just have a target and you hold, have it tied up in your garage or in your basement and it's just shoulder height, just to go through the muscle memory and execute, pour your heart and soul into good form and good execution and, fire off 5 to 10 shots, every day or every other day or whenever you can, goes a long ways. Cause, we, at the end of the day, we kind of know you pretty much aiming is second nature. So you just want that good muscle memory and, go through the motion, so to speak, so that you can be proficient when you do get a chance to go outside and shoot. And then, naturally you want to practice the yardages of 20, 30, and 40 and build the confidence on a high level there.
Yeah.
But if you do get the chance, especially with your friends to shoot 80, 90, 100 yards, there's something magical about watching an arrow fly that far and, just like, man, I hit the pie plate at 100 yards. That means a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah. I gave it away. I said 60. So like, yeah, I see these guys shooting 100 plus, like, floating them in there. So gave away my proficiency there. But are you still playing around with arrow setups at this point, or are you kind of locked in on, I see you got some devastating broadheads you're using, but like as far as your arrow build goes, do you change that up much for hunts, or do you kind of find a medium ground of a weight that works with the right FOC that you kind of just use for everything, or how does that play out for you? Are you still playing around with it, or are you locked in?
Yeah, I'm pretty locked in. I've pretty much, I mean, maybe within a few grains here or there. Everything that I've shot for the last 5 or 6 years, I tinker around with some things, but I'm usually locked in somewhere between that 480 to about 530 grains. Try to get my FOC in that 15% to 18 or 19%. I do play around with components and things like that, but I feel like my setup, or that setup that I'm discussing, would handle just about anything, in North America. If I was going to hunt a buffalo, or was telling someone that there was hunting a buffalo or something like a moose, you may want to consider going to a fixed blade broadhead.
Sure.
Just for complete penetration. But I feel like that weight is pretty good from a wind standpoint. There's a bunch of boxes to check off, not just the penetration, but the trajectory, the speed of the bow. I feel the biggest component is you want the heavy, not the heaviest, but a good heavy arrow, a good weighted arrow that's flying the speeds that you like. Meaning, like, it's hard to explain to someone, but to me, I like my arrow going around that 260 to about a 285 to 290 speed range.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do my best between poundage of the bow, weight of the bow, FOC, to try to get the perfect arrow to fly those speeds. And I try to achieve them speeds not from a standpoint of like I want that fast. I just think that's a good, with the efficiency of the bows that we have now, you can get the bow to perform extremely forgiving. It's extremely quiet. You're not like hot rodding the bow out.
Right.
And plus, I've shot that speed for so long from a competitive standpoint, because 280 is the speed limit on most of your 3D shoots. I feel you become one with the arrow. You almost learn that trajectory. It's like an extension of your arm, of
Like throwing a football.
how do I throw this baseball across? Yeah, how do I throw this baseball across home plate? Well, you learn that speed, and there becomes a comfort factor for the cast and the trajectory of that arrow, ducking under limbs, shooting over hills. You just have a good feel for it. I know it's hard to explain, but you shoot that speed so much, you learn what your capabilities are and what the bow's capabilities are. When you go faster than 290, it seems like the bow gets a little hard to tune. It's noisier, and you're really not gaining anything. I posted something not long ago showing that the difference in nearly 20 feet per second is only 1 yard from 0 to 50. So we as men get it stuck in our head that we're gonna, we really want to really, really fast is the way to go, when you're not really gaining anything. And what you're losing accuracy, you're potentially losing accuracy, potentially losing forgiveness, and the noisiness of the bow. Whereas if you would get that more attainable in that 260 to 280 range, you can have all that, and you're not losing much trajectory at all. So
I think I saw that where you had the tapes laid out, and you didn't have much difference at all when you laid them side by side with, what you think you might be gaining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And most of us can't shoot the difference in that anyway, but it's always that in our head we get pumped. This bow should do 350, this bow should do 340, so you get hung up on the speed. No different than if you're going to buy the Corvette, you want the fastest one. We can't drive but 65 mile an hour on the interstate, but we still want the fast. So our ego wants us to shoot the fastest, when we should harness that energy in a more forgiving, a more lethal type setup.
Build it for what you wanted to do, not for
Correct.
Hot rod. Now, he
Correct.
said hot rod, and I
Yeah.
think that's, sometimes that's what it feels like.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so much debate.
And I tell people,
Go ahead.
oh yeah, and I tell people all the time, it all depends on what you want to do. For the guys that are shooting out west, they are going to have longer shots, and they don't have to worry about deer ducking their strings, or antelope ducking their strings like a whitetail would. If you're hunting, in the east and tree stand hunting and stuff, odds are you're not going to have a shot over 35 or 40 yards. But hunting a whitetail in the southeast versus hunting a mule deer in the west, there's different applications. So no different than if you're shooting a rifle, and there's so many different calibers and so many different weights and types of bullets and ammo. Same thing holds true with arrows. But I try, because we've traveled all these years, and I'd like to know that I've spent a lot of time behind the bow with my setup, and I'm so comfortable with it, and my confidence is so high that no matter what I get sent to hunt or whatever hunting trip I'm going on, for the most part, 95% of all the critters in North America, I'm pretty much dialed in, ready to roll.
That's awesome. It's good advice. One of those that likes to tinker sometimes. I'm like, I need to just keep it and rock and roll and get better.
Yeah, it's probably better you focus on your
Yeah.
form.
Right. Yeah.
And,
I gave it away with the 60 yards. Pretty far from yeah.
Now, I love to tinker. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm a mad scientist a lot of times, but it's just answering questions, and it seems like I always come back to this. And that doesn't mean it's necessary. That's just my findings. So it's real opinionated, or like Carlos was saying, it's something that seems like it's getting debated quite a lot between arrow weights and FOC and things like that. But you got to shoot what's most comfortable to you and whatever builds confidence. And I always come back to this. No matter how fast your bow is, no matter how slow it is, no matter what you're shooting, accuracy is always going to win. No matter what broadhead you choose, accuracy always wins. It always means the most important thing. So, we don't need to lose sight of that.
And then I think you just got a new bow, right? Like what bow are you running this year?
It's the Hoyt Z1S. They usually always have a high performance bow in the line, and this is their high performance bow this year. I wanted to try it. I haven't shot their high performance bow in probably 10 years. The main reason I wanted to shoot it is because it's not like I wanted to. The brace height on this bow was only an 1/8 inch shorter than their main bread and butter bow, the VTM or the RX7. So it's only an 1/8 of an inch shorter brace height. So I'm not losing a lot on the forgiveness. But the main thing was the cam design is it's a more aggressive cam, so it has a longer power stroke. It might not be the absolute most comfortable one to draw, but once you've shot it quite enough, you learn the draw force curve of the bow, so it feels good.
Yeah.
And then I'm always a fan of, I like to hold a lot of weight. I shoot pure back tension, so I love to shoot, to shoot pure back tension to where it's a push and a pull. It's not as comfortable to hold back because you're holding a little bit more weight, but when you're shooting back tension, it's a better execution, and believe it or not, it's actually more forgiving, because the reason why we can hold a bow still and aim so well and execute is because you have the resistance of push and pull.
That counterbalance.
So bows like this don't sell as well off the shelf because you end up, the higher let off is more comfortable. The guy goes into the store, he grabs the bow, he pulls it back, and he's like, man, I can hold this thing forever.
Yeah.
Well, because you're not holding nothing, I mean, yeah, there is a comfort factor there, and you can be still, but execution-wise doesn't translate into accuracy. So it's more of a tournament style feel, so I wanted to try that, and it's been working well. And like I said, that bow is like IBO legal at 350 feet per second. It gives me options on my setup and arrow weight, and I can harness that energy into a more forgiving setup, so to speak. I'm not trying to build a dragster. I'm just building, it gives me more options as far as tinkering with what I like. And thus far, it's been, I've been extremely pleased with it. But I've also got a VTM setup that is just absolutely driving tacks too.
Awesome. Well, and then you touched on it with the competition a little bit. And we were watching, I was watching it not too long ago, the Realtree video on kind of the T-Bone story. And it highlighted a little bit how you got into archery. And that immediate sort of success into that, I will say, and just how that started off. Do you mind going through that again? Because I just think it's a really cool story of how you got into it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I was pretty much against bow hunting. Just to bring everybody up to date, is I got a bow for good grades when I was about 9, 10, 11 years old, and my dad didn't know what to buy, and he bought me too strong it was a 45-pound recurve. So, of course, I was bending the string 10 inches or so, but I couldn't come to full draw, and it was too much bow for me. But, I loved watching the arrow fly, but I'd whack my arm like so many people do. So I had a bad introduction into archery is like, man, I'm too weak. I can't shoot a bow. This is no fun. I can't hit what I'm aiming at. So, you get the wrong, you get set up wrong, and you get the wrong equipment, and you're going to have a bad, results.
Yeah.
So I put it down. And then, slightly out of high school, I love fishing all through high school, and I did a lot of small game hunting. But I joined a club with my buddies the year I got out of high school, and they said, hey, you're going to bow. You end up wounding a bunch of deer. And, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I can't even pull 45 pounds, even though, I went through high school. And there's a big change in, in all of us from 10 years old to 18 years old. So I'm bench pressing 260 pounds, and I'm a offensive lineman, and knowing that I was a lot stronger, but in the back of my head, I can't pull 45 pounds. So the guys talked me into getting a bow because I was going to get left out with doing stuff with my friends. I went and bought a bow, paid nearly $500 for a setup, wouldn't pull it back in the store because I was afraid of being embarrassed. And, I took the bow home, and I'm like, I got to try to pull this back at some point. The guy backed it down. He tied my peep in just where he thought it should be, because I wouldn't even try to pull it back. And I was at home, and it was on 64 pounds. I said, all right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. And I about ripped the wheels off of it. And it was just an instant flush come over my body. It's like, man, I'm going to be able to do this, man. This is going to be all right. So I bought the bow on a Wednesday, and Sunday we went and shot a tournament, a 3D tournament, local 3D tournament. And, they talked me into going. I didn't want to go. I only had 6 arrows, and I'm like, man, I'm, like so many people when they hear archery tournament, I think of about 150 people in all white suits on a line, what we used to read in encyclopedias and stuff. That's what I thought a tournament was. But this is almost like golf. It was like redneck golf. You walk through the woods and you shoot at targets and you score yourself, and you're high-fiving and having fun with your buddies. And we got done. I didn't lose any arrows, and I had beat all my buddies. There were 6 of us went, and I was like, man, I like this. I mean, this was pretty fun. We turned our scorecards in, and I think there was 30-something people in the class. It was a novice class, nothing over like 30, 35 yards. And lo and behold, I had the top scorer. So I was hooked like a fish. I'm like, man, I've never been nothing but a big spot on the front line of the football field, but man, I might be able to shoot a bow. So, I couldn't get enough of it. I mean, I was absolutely, I read every magazine. I rented they was VHS tapes back then, but I was renting tapes. Anything I could learn about archery, I was shooting all the time. I tried to go to all the tournaments I could. I just absolutely couldn't get enough of it. So that kind of created a monster, so to speak.
So I think just going for your first one and then coming out on top, I'm sure that was a different feeling than the first one of, I can't even do this. But that's so cool.
Did you jump straight from target then into hunting with it, or was it?
What was that trajectory after that?
Oh yeah, so that was probably in June when I'd shot my first tournament, and we shot 2 or 3 that summer, and then we the opening day it was raining, it was pouring rain. We was at our club. I joined that club with them, and 6 does came out, and I picked the biggest one, and my heart was about to jump out of my chest. That was my first deer period. I'd never even killed one with a gun by then, and awesome. I shot it, and man, I was hooked. I actually ended up killing 3 with a bow that first year, so it was I was absolutely gut hooked, man. I knew right then that archery was going to be in my life till they put me in the ground.
Yeah, we talked about getting kids into youth season and that sort of introduction into hunting, and like the one thing we kind of walked away with in the last conversation was just make sure they have a good time and like a good memory. And it's kind of like what you're touching on, like you had a negative memory to that initial like experience, and that's what kind of caused the delay. So I think it's just make sure if you're getting a kid into hunting, they have a great time no matter what. Yeah. And just as they walk away.
And that was honestly, that was a big part of how I got into the industry. I used to work for Mercedes-Benz, and then I started working at a store because I was tired of driving into downtown Atlanta. And I started working in a store. I took a huge pay cut to work in a store, but my dad, my uncles, and they had said, once you pursue your passion, you'll never feel like you worked a day in your life, which I wholeheartedly believe. So I started pursuing archery. I started working in a shop, and then um, that led me to opening my own store. And then, like you said, you have a negative experience. I was like, man, I'm not saying I'm the archery god or archery guru, but when I started working with the guys at Realtree, I told them, I said, listen, I said, you guys are the top hunting show at the time, and the DVDs and the VHS. I said, you're taking all these celebrities and people introducing them. I said, I'm just letting my services be known. I'll be glad to help them get set up, because I've seen so many people. How many times have y'all been flipping through a magazine and see an ad, and you got a guy at full draw, and he's too long of a draw, or the peep sight's way high, or there's no peep sight in the string whatsoever.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows anything about archery, they're like, well, that, there's no validity there.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure that people looked or knew what they were doing, so that they wouldn't have a negative experience, because I knew that if these celebrities are getting into archery, I want them to have a great experience and be proficient at it, so that they can spread the word about, how good hunting is and how good archery is. So that was kind of my stepping stone with my relationship with Realtree. And, even to this day, my wife, we built our house. I sold my store. I had it for 12 years. And when we built our house, I put a shop in the basement. I got an indoor range in the basement. And she said, why are you doing this? We sold our store, in 2006. And I said, even if I dip septic tanks for a living, I'm going to be doing something with a bow. I just love it that much. So I still set up 40 or 50 bows a year, and absolutely love it, just from the standpoint of learning all the new stuff, the innovations, and it makes me feel so good to somebody that comes over to the house and getting their bow set up, and they think, you can just tell by the way they're acting, it's like, I'm going to have to do this every day and shoot 50 arrows a day to be proficient. And we go out there, and once you're set up correctly with the right draw length, and you get a good a firm basis, so that everything fits you good, and then within 10 shots we're hitting a baseball every time at 20 yards, you can just see how excited and the joy come over them. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to love this sport,
Yeah.
So they
Light
see
up
how
a
good they
little
can when they're set up.
No, and I think I've talked to a few people who have been through the T-Bone archery onboarding experience, and like only fantastic things. Like, I think they just feel like it's a safe place. Kind of like what you were saying, you go into the shop, you don't want to look like you don't know what you don't know. But with this, working with you, they get to ask the dumb questions, go through it. And I think that's just, it's been interesting, because like there's a big shift on archery of it's sort of who knows the most. And it's starting to become a little bit intimidating with all the information out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, you've always been a really good, honest, easy to talk to resource for that. So it's always been awesome, and we appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. And I get told that quite a lot. And I mean, when I had a store, you could tell that people were uneasy coming in there, because I've been around so many shops around the country where, there's egos in there. You walk in with an old bow that's 4 years old, and you got an old rest, and rather than the shop owner or the person at the shop, I'm not saying all shops are this way, but it does happen from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than you having the shop owner having open arms and say, hey, let me show you a few options. Let's see if we can't, polish up what we got going on your setup and stuff. And earning that guy's trust, they immediately beat him up by, like making him feel like an idiot for having the stuff he's got, or bought the stuff where he bought it from. And I'm like, you're never going to get this guy as a customer if you make him feel that way. You need to earn his trust, put your arm around him, show him some love, get him on the right track, and he'll be your customer and spread positive words throughout the whole area for your shop. I mean, that's just the way to do it. So, no, I know how I see people feel, and I don't want people to feel that way. So, you learn the person that you're talking to. No matter who you are, you can work within somebody's budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of figuring out what's important, and you can always, on a certain setup, you can always shave a little bit off of the budget in certain areas. There are certain things that are important, like an arrow rest or release in the bow. You get a good basis there. You can aim with a toothpick. You could put a toothpick on the front of the bow and aim with it until you can get yourself a better sight. So, yeah, there's ways to work around it. But at the end of the day, you want that person to have a a good experience. And from that point on, they'll be a customer for you for life.
Yeah,
For
no,
sure.
that's awesome. And then you mentioned, you were talking about back tension before. Real quick question: whenever someone's getting into that, like where do you recommend they start with the release? Like, 'cause I know there's a form that you're really working on, and that's really mostly having that controlled with your back, and it's not really in
Yes.
making sure you're not moving as you're releasing the arrow. Is it start where you're comfortable, or start where you like? Do you start where you want to end up? Like, what do you do there?
Well, you should really learn from the, if you learn correctly from the word go, it'll be hard to develop bad habits. So many people, and I don't know why there's a disconnect, but the way you shoot a rifle is the way you should shoot a bow. So, you put steady pressure on the trigger, and, you pull straight through the back of the trigger, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. It's no different than with a bow, but for some reason people want to shoot a bow like a shotgun almost, punching the
Slap
trigger,
it.
slapping the trigger. And then that breeds target panic, and or you collapse on the shot, or you flinch on the shot, and that breeds target panic. So, I tell everybody, like, if this is the trigger, a lot of people will take their finger and just barely touch, and they're pushing down. Whereas, no different than a rifle. Imagine that this is a rifle trigger. You want to have a good full wrap, and you want to pull straight back on the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. So most people shoot an index release, and it's the easiest one to adjust to, because you have a wrist strap that you're able to pull more weight, and you feel safer doing so. But just practice doing that. When, like, imagine that you've got a ball between your shoulder blades. You want to relax your arms. Don't try to macho use your shoulders. So many people incorporate their arms and their shoulders to, macho man, pull the bow back and hold it back. But once you get the bow back, it's not hard to hold. Then you want to relax everything, but let your back muscles expand your chest, and then let your back muscles go together like you're mashing a ball between your shoulder blades. And then, isolate your finger a little bit, wrap it around the trigger, build up some tension on the trigger, and then just pull through with your back muscles. Just like that. And then, if you'll learn patience and to execute that way, then you always want a surprise shot. Now, everybody needs their form polished from time to time, but, you're going down at first, people who slap the trigger don't have any anticipation. That's the word I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
They don't have any anticipation. So therefore, as long as you don't have anticipation and your bow arm doesn't move before your release arm, there's not really an issue there.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be the most accurate shooter, but it's inevitable. It's going to get you.
Yeah.
That bow arm is going to move. You're going to miss the whole target. You're going to start flinching. You're going to breed target panic. So in the long road, that's not the way to go. You want to squeeze the trigger, aim, stare where you want to hit, and just let the shot happen. Nobody's going to be perfectly still. So just hang in there and just, have those little movements, and let the pin just hum on the target, and let the shot happen with a lot of people confuse the bow should be fired with back tension no matter what release you use, whether it's a T-handle, whether it's a hinge, whether it's an index release. A lot of people call a T-handle or a hinge a back tension release, but in all actuality, back tension is the method in which you fire any release.
Yeah.
You should be firing any release.
Yeah.
Yeah, the style of release, no matter if it's a hinge, T-handle, or index, should all be fired with back tension. So there's a little bit of a misconception there.
Yeah, and that's where I think we were having this debate, because myself started archery, like messing with it a little bit last year, and there was all these kind of tips that started coming in of, hey, this is what you should do, and I think I got too many link recommendations for, here, buy this, and I didn't know why, and that's what I immediately just started going to your Instagram and watching videos and everything, but it's cool to see, like, no matter what, it seems like there's a core driver for what you should be doing in archery, and everything else is really just little preference.
I think you said it, Tebow. You could do it with any kind of release, right? You're shooting it the same way, but I think, you don't necessarily have to jump probably to a back tension. I don't know if you do like blind bailing or anything like that too, where it's like everybody eventually sometimes has a moment of target panic. Do you do any of that, or where it's, it's like, okay, I just kind of had to reset here and just practice pulling through, and I'm going to get up close and then, bounce back to 20, 30, 40, whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend it. Back tension is like we said, is the way that you uh, execute the release, whether it's a hinge, which has no trigger, and then you have a T handle, which has a thumb release or a pinky release, and then the index finger. You execute all those with back tension. But yes, I don't necessarily, it's called blind belling. I don't recommend that you close your eyes. I recommend that you take a piece of tape, you aim down range, but you put tape on your sight and or take the sight off the bow so that you're just shooting at a blank bell, but don't close your eyes, because what I've found out that by blank belling, you're looking across the bridge of your nose, and when you close your eyes, your eyes automatically go back to this, so you end up swaying back and forth this way. So you want your eyes looking down range. You just don't want anything to be aiming at as far as like a sight picture.
Take that piece of it out.
Another thing, yeah, and then another thing that's equally as important is basically what you're doing is you're learning to aim without shooting and shoot without aiming. So you want to execute and learn good muscle memory with back tension, but then when you're aiming, like you can sit in the living room with an extra set of sight and just aim at light switches on the wall or corners of the TV and just go through that imaginary process, envisioning like I'm executing a release, so that you get used to seeing the perfect picture of the pin on the target, and then you imagine that the shot executed, and then what you end up doing is bringing those two together.
Good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I mean, I know we covered a few of your successes. Do you, real quick, I think the last thing I want to go through is and it might be a good hunt. I don't think we want to limit it to worst hunt ever. But like,
are we making this a thing? So I think we've been kind of closing with,
So what's like a memorable experience in hunting, archery, rifle, doesn't matter. But like, what's something that you walked away learning from and wouldn't mind telling us about?
Oh, wow. There's certainly lots of memorable hunts, and I've been real blessed, with the guy, with Michael and Nick with Bone Collector and Realtree, of course, to go on a lot of hunts. I guess the one that stands out that most people would know about, I mean, there are a lot of great hunts, and there are a lot of things that you learn. It's like, I'm not going to do that again. But one that kind of stands out, it's been probably 10 years ago now. We were hunting in Mexico, and I had a buck that I shot. It was late in the morning, and it was our target buck. It was a big buck, and it was probably 10 o'clock in the morning. We were hunting in Mexico, and cell phones didn't work. We didn't have radios, so it was a you go to the blind and you're there until the outfitter comes picks you up. It was a 80,000 acre ranch, and it was just me and Waddell and one other guy hunting the whole thing. So I had no idea where Waddell was. I had no idea where the other guy was. We got dropped off, and the buck that we were targeting in our area came in. I shot him, made a really good shot. I mean, you can see that on the tape if you watch the hunt. I mean, it was, those deer seem to be, they're smaller in body size, so you want to stay tight to the shoulder. I mean, I thought I was at the very back of the heart, and I felt like I did the heart shooting. I'm like, dead deer, no problem. Arrow blew through it, total penetration. You could actually even see on the tape, it had on the front end where the entrance hole, before the deer left, it had a good entrance hole. I'm thinking it ran just out of sight and died. We get out of the blind. We're walking, following good blood. We get about 100, 125 yards up the trail, and the outfitter drives up, and he goes, hey, he says, y'all shoot one? I said, yes, we shot one. I said, we're trailing it up now. He said, jump in the truck. Waddell's only about, he's just through the valley over here. It's not too far away. He says, we'll go pick him up, and we'll come back, and then we'll do a group recovery. And I said, okay. So we drive all the way around, and the road system, it took a while to get over there. And we get over there, and Waddell's already out of his blind, and he goes, I just shot your deer. And I'm like, how'd you shoot my deer? And what are you talking about? And he goes, you shot an 11-pointer, didn't you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I just shot it. And I'm like, there's no way. I mean, he was so far away, and I'm like, there's no way you shot it. And he goes, oh, yeah, I did. And we walked over there to it. And sure enough, he had shot my deer, because my deer had ran, and as the crow flies, we figured everything out. There was a box blind behind us. We were on a ground blind, and you could see the box blind because, it's deserty out there in Mexico.
Yeah.
And we range find it with our, and it was 1,500 yards away.
Wow.
And that deer ran 1,500 yards on what I would consider a I mean, I might have moved my where I hit that deer over to the right, maybe an inch and a half, 2 inches. But in all practical purposes, I'd take that any day of the week. And that deer made it 1,500 yards in front of Waddell. And the raw footage shows, I mean, the deer was gonna die,
Yeah.
but for say that it made it that far, I was like, couldn't believe it.
That's insane.
So it came by him. He ended up shooting it twice, and you could tell it was going down or whatever. But he's like, man, somebody shot that deer, and he shot it. And I was wanting to dissect it because I'm like, what happened? I mean,
It's a freak of
thing just
nature.
have a hole in it?
Yeah.
Yes. So we of course we tried to dissect it, but with three, broadheads going through it, it looked like Denny Moore stew on the inside. It was pretty chewed up. You couldn't tell what did what. But that deer made it. And the only thing I can, I get asked about that. We call it the waddy bone buck because we never know who should tag it.
Yeah.
I put the first shot in it, but he put two. Who's going to put their tag on it?
Yeah.
But we after dissecting it and as soon as after I shot, I heard coyotes get up and the rest of the deer. So it's late in the morning. The deer wanting to go bed up. They wanting to go to where Waddell is because he was hunting a dry creek bed.
Mm.
So the deer they're wanting to go that way. There was cows in the pasture. I'm not sure if the cows pushed them, the coyotes pushed them, and he was just running on his last bit of adrenaline rather than just kind of stumbling out there and dying 200 yards and bedding up. I wonder if all the adrenaline, and because those little deer in Mexico are almost like Ethiopian long distance runners.
Yeah.
I don't think a Midwest deer would do that. Just because he's kind of like a T-bone deer, he's just going to waddle out there and fall over. But so I guess he just went on a death run and made it 1,500 yards, and that's the only thing I can think of because it just doesn't make sense. Because I mean all the shots that we put on it was perfect. I mean it was like we shot Iron Man.
That is
Wow.
crazy. That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
I guess good or bad, maybe it's good he showed up at Waddy's area just so you didn't have to track it 1,500 yards.
Oh my God.
Oh,
insane.
exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. And I always, people, they come back to camp, we had the luxury of having cameras there and it would have been real easy for us to edit it like, hey, I killed it immediately, but we showed it just like that.
That's cool.
And so many people was, wow, I can't believe that. But how many times have you been in camp and somebody comes back and goes, man, I made a perfect shot on it. And I can't believe we can't find it. We've been tracking it for a half mile and everybody's kind of giving the guy who shot the deer the stink eye like, yeah, sure, you made a perfect shot. So there might be some truth to that. So luckily we had cameras where we could see all that happen. It was pretty amazing. We get a lot of feedback from that hunt whenever it comes up.
Wow, that's cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, you never would have looked that far. Like that's insane. I mean, good thing you had the rangefinder there just to figure out how far that was. But what would be your tips for a new archer getting started?
For a new archer is one of the biggest things is make sure that you get set up properly. Visit a local pro shop, an independent pro shop, something that's reputable in your area. Go in and get fitted correctly between the proper weight, the draw length, of course. That's very, very crucial. Getting the right arrow correctly and your bow tuned is going to make the whole process in learning archery so much better. So that's what I would recommend. And then make sure that you practice. Practice to build confidence. Don't shoot beyond your comfortable distance. Try to keep things close, and just have fun with it. By all means, just have fun with it. And for a kid, I would recommend. That was for a new archer, but for a kid, something that really helps with them is make sure that you get like hay bales, because sometimes with these high-end targets, their arrows don't stick into a target. I found that it's really, really impressive for a arrow to stick in a target. So a youngster loves to see their arrow. So you may want to just buy some local hay or wheat straw or something like that so that they can see their arrows syncing up, and then also let them shoot at balloons because they get instant gratification from popping balloons rather than seeing that I was a foot and a half off from the bullseye.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that they're busting balloons. So that's what I would recommend.
Goes a little bit with target panic, but like tip for making a good shot on an animal. We talked about shooting targets at distance. Shooting dots is a lot different than shooting an animal. Any tips you have for somebody that you talked about your first doe, your heart was beating through your chest. Do you have any tips for taking a shot on an animal? Let's say maybe for the first time, for example.
Yeah, I would. I would learn angles. You know, I highly recommend getting a 3D target and then learning angles, meaning, you know, whether you're elevated, whether you're in a ground blind, shooting slightly uphill, all those things change the positioning of the vitals. So what I always tell people is try to aim for the offside shoulder. Naturally, sometimes you do take a slightly quarter two shot, but for the most part, we should be striving for a broadside or a quartered away shot. And if you'll always aim towards that offside shoulder, you're always going to be going through the vitals. And then what I would tell someone to do, so that, you know, there's a lot going on in just a nano of a second as a critter comes in. A lot of times you have to, you know, you have to have the yardage in your head. You're having to range find. You're having to set your sight. Sometimes there's a lot of things going on, and you've only got a window of 2 or 3 seconds for that shot, stopping him in a hole. The biggest thing is don't forget to pick a spot. So many people just get the pins within the vitals and let her fly. And then when it's all said and done, it's like, did I even put my pin where it needed to be? You know, you're not even really sure. So I tell people to aim at a hair. I mean, imagine that there's a tick on that animal right where you want to hit and really bear down hard. You know, I guess it gets cliche, aim small, miss small, but that try to stay in the moment and try to pick a spot, because, you know, the tighter you try to aim, the better you're going to be. And, you know, like we said from the beginning of this podcast, accuracy always wins. So try to pick a spot on that animal, a hair, a tick, or something to aim at, and try to hit that offside shoulder.
So you've done a lot. You've been in the industry a long time. You've, like you said, done a lot of cool hunts. Is there anything still on your list, a hunt, maybe a particular animal that you're saying, this is still on my list, I haven't got to it, I want to?
Yeah, I've you know, when I was in my early 20s, I would have never even envisioned killing or going on half the hunts that I've been on. So to be honest with you, I'm extremely blessed to have taken what I've taken. And, you know, it's opened my eyes, losing my leg to cancer. You know, if I don't even get to kill another cockroach in my life, I've far outlived my dreams. However, you know, if you put a gun to my head and said, what's one more thing you would like to, a Yukon moose, like a float trip, a archery hunt for a Yukon moose would probably be the top of my list. I haven't done that, but, you know, again, if that doesn't happen, man, I've far outlived my dreams. So I'm, you know, continue on sharing great camps, happy gut piles with my friends. That means as much, if not more, than any bucket list animal. But if you know, if you're putting a gun to my head and making me choose, I would like to I wouldn't mind doing a Yukon moose hunt. That would be my last bucket list hunt.
Awesome.
Let me ask that a little different way, because I know we've been talking about you're really into the land prep. Is there an area or something like that? There's certain
Different
grass,
geography that you
a different grass you'd want to cut. Like, what about there? Like, what's something you've been wanting to try in that realm?
More of the same. Actually, you know, I guess as I look into the retirement years, I wouldn't mind having. I've owned several farms in Kansas, and I love Kansas. It's my favorite state. I would like to be able to spend more time in Kansas and try to extremely polish a piece of land that I had out in Kansas to see what we could grow. I guess I'm part-time land managing out there, but I'd love to be able to spend like 6 months or more out in Kansas, really, really polishing up a piece of property and just see exactly what we could get out of it, because man, it's so awesome just naturally, and I would love to see what we could polish up. But yeah, I love me some Kansas.
No, well, we appreciate you joining us. We'll have to have you on soon, and we can talk more about everything. But no, this has been great, and then you know, we'll probably follow up with you on a few things, see how the season's going, and
yeah,
and if there's anything else you need, let us know.
Man, you guys do the same. I can't say enough about you know, everybody, the Bushnell family. I appreciate y'all having me on, and you know, anytime that you guys you know, need anything my way or our way, we're much appreciated, and be glad to jump on another podcast or anything like that. Just let me know. Be glad to.
Yeah, I have to visit the archery shop in your basement. That's my next visit. So
yep.
Appreciate it. Have a good
Come
one.
on down. We'll love to have you guys. Y'all have a good one.
Take it easy.
Thanks, T-Bone.
Thank you, guys.